Hello, my dear students. I hope you all are fine, all healthy and sound. Now, let us start with our next chapter, that is matter around us pure? That is the second chapter of science. Is matter around us pure? See here, before this, when we did chapter 1, what we have learnt is that matter is basically has three states: solid, liquid and gas. That was sufficient. Now what more? Plenty more, my dear students, because that separation is not at all sufficient. It is not at all sufficient that okay, I'll just understand that matter has got three states: solid, liquid, gas, and then that's all. Nothing much more is there. Now the question of the chapter is that, is matter around us pure? So that means that matter around us, whatever that is matter, whatever is there, we are surrounded by, either it is pure or it is no. Matter is not, when we talk about here, it is not pure and impure. Nothing of this sort. Matter is either pure, means when they say anything is pure, that means it is made up of one and only one single substance. See, if we talk about water, the water has all the molecules H2O, and this is what it is going to have throughout. It is made up of this one single substance, molecule, water everywhere. So this is basically a pure substance. See, one molecule is made up of two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen. That is a different question. But then, like this one identity, the smallest identity over there is a water molecule, and the whole substance of water is made up of that one molecule, completely everywhere. So that's why water I will call it as a pure substance. One more interesting thing I'll tell you. Supposing sodium chloride, that is normally salt. When I talk about sodium chloride, if I take maybe a spoon of sodium chloride, then definitely this whole spoon has got NaCl. So this is definitely a pure substance. This is a pure substance. NaCl is a pure substance. But if I pour this into this water, now there is NaCl also, which is dissolved state, of course, in a dissolved state. But now there are more than one substance over there. This solution is now made up of more than one substance. Now this solution is no more a pure substance. What will this be called? This will be called as a mixture. A big topic. Mixture is a very huge topic, because simple, whatever the amount of matter that we are surrounded by, maximum amount of matter we are surrounded by is a mixture. Mixture is not impure. It is not like pure water, impure water. This is not impure water. We require this water, we drink this water, we use this water. This will not call. Impure is something that is negative, that is bad. Impure water is not at all healthy for us. So this is not impure, but this is a mixture. Are you getting? So matter can be broadly divided into two parts. One is pure substances, where substances are made up of single component, single substance. When a substance is made up of one single component, then it is called as a pure substance. Remember this, my dear students. Somewhere there are questions that are asked. Page number 15. what is meant by a substance. Basically it should have been a pure substance. There must have been some printing mistake over there. What is meant by a substance? See, this type of questions I may not write the answers on the board. You have to carefully listen, take down, write it down over there. What is meant by a substance? A substance is a pure substance consists of a single type of particles in it. Are you getting my point? These are pure substances. They have single type of particles in it or single component in it, then they are pure substances. Pure water is a pure substance. Sodium chloride, when you take it as a powder, as a product, one solid, then it is a pure substance. Sugar is a pure substance. See, sugar definitely has many more atoms in it. C6H12O6, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. But definitely it is one molecule has 6H12O6, one molecule of sugar. But then it is a pure substance. Each molecule is made up of that one type only. Throughout it is made up of that one molecule. So sugar as a solid, as an identity of sugar, is a pure substance. But the moment you dissolve it in milk, it becomes a mixture. Okay, so this is how we broadly divide matter around us into two things. One is pure and the other one is mixture. Definitely pure substances also are further divided into two things. One is element and the other one is compound, which is basically at the end of the chapter. But first we will start with mixture. See, when we talk about mixture, the mixture, what all types of mixtures are there? Innumerable type of mixtures. But if I see, we have seen this solid into liquid. I dissolve solid in liquid. Examples are salt in water, sugar in water. So they are basically all solid in liquid type of mixtures. Then we also have liquid in liquid. Definitely we can talk many over here. Interesting. We can talk many over here, but I'll rather take a solution of, like, supposing sugar solution was there, solid in liquid. I can even talk about, purposely I'm taking this, oil in water. Fine, this is oil and this is water. This is liquid in liquid, oil in water, milk in water also I can take, no problem. But there are many, you can have plenty of this sort. So liquid in liquid, then gas in liquid, very interesting one. Most of you people like this, all the aerated drinks. Aerated drinks means, in short, not necessarily, but cold drinks which are having gas in it. Coca-Cola, Thumbs Up, Coke, all they have gas in it are basically aerated drinks. Here I can't take the example of fruity or Mangola. You can understand the difference between fruity, Mangola, all. They basically don't have that much of gas in it as Thumbs Up or Coke has, Pepsi has. So basically Thumbs Up, Coke, Pepsi, they are all aerated drinks. Aerated, air, you can consider this air like air, A-I-R. Drinks in which air is mixed, but that is not definitely this normal air. It is sometimes carbon dioxide, but whatever it is, a gaseous form is mixed in it. So that is gas in liquid. Also we have solid in solid. Yes, this is, we have seen in abundance. Solid in solid, all alloys are basically mixtures. See, we have got many things around us. We use stainless steel glass. Basically, it is not one element in it. There are many elements involved in that stainless steel. Many other metals are mixed together, zinc, tin, some amount of. So they are basically, stainless steel is an alloy. It is not a naturally found substance. Many metals, they are mixed together and then we get a stainless steel. Similarly, brass is an alloy, copper and all, they are mixed together and we get an alloy, definitely. But when you make you see it as a whole, you will not be able to distinguish between two metals. It looks as a whole uniform metal basically, but it is solid in solid. Then there can be, what do I have? Am I missing with anything? Gas in, there can be, there are many gas in, gas and liquid is over. Solid in gas, something different. Solid in gas, basically solid in gas is nothing but when you have smoke is basically solid in gas. Smoke, that particles, solid particles are mixed in gas and then they are moving around, is a solid in gas particle. Liquid in gas is basically fog. Fog is nothing but liquid in gas. So this type of basically mixtures are there, but there can be, now see, of course when you make a mixture there are three different things that you get, but before understanding this you have to understand. See, if I talk about this mixture, can I call this a homogeneous mixture? Homogeneous, and this is heterogeneous. Can I call them like this? Can I call them homogeneous mixture, heterogeneous mixture? Yes. Why it is homogeneous and why it is heterogeneous? See, this is what basically, okay, this was water I suppose, but no, this I'll mix some salt in it. Salt plus water. Say if it is salt solution, if it is salt, solute is a salt and solvent is water. So this also you should remember, understand, solute and solvent. This you should know again, solute and solvent. What is solute? That basically that you are going to dissolve in the other. Solute is a small part and solvent is a bigger part. I can't say every time that solvent is definitely every time a liquid only. No. Many times, like here I can say solid in gas, where we have particles of solid in atmosphere. At that time solid is a solute, gas is the solvent. Okay. Aerated drinks, gas is the solute, liquid is the solvent. Solid in solid, solid is the solute and solid is the solvent. Solute is a smaller part and solvent is a bigger part, larger part. That is the main thing. See, this you have to understand, solute and solvent. One which goes into the bigger one, bigger part is the solute and the bigger part is the solvent. So here when we have salt, a solute mixed in a solvent, the water, here each and can you make out afterwards that this is a salt particle over here, this is the salt particle over here? Can you make out like this? You cannot make it out like this. But here when the oil is mixed in water, then definitely you, however vigorously you shake the oil, within seconds so oil will come at the surface of the water. The water will go down. They will be separated from each other. So you can very well make out this is oil and this is water. Okay, so that is basically heterogeneous mixture. Here you can't make any such difference. What is the condition in homogeneous mixture? The components don't have defined boundaries of separation. Here we can't make there are no defined boundaries. Here salt is there, here water is there. You can't make such separations. So this is homogeneous mixture. Definitely the components have defined boundaries of separation. Okay. One more thing, the composition over here, if you will see throughout, this is the whole mass of the salt solution. The composition, you take any composition, it will be same. The composition throughout the mass is uniform. When it is a composition here, there is uniform composition. Throughout the mass. Here there is no uniform composition throughout the mass. If you see over here, see, only if you can take this composition, this will be only oil, this will be oil and water, this will be water, oil, water, oil and water. The composition is not uniform throughout. So this is a heterogeneous mixture. This is basically, I am trying to explain you, this is not only during mixtures, my dear students. It is not that only mixtures are homogeneous mixture, heterogeneous mixture. Homogeneous is an solutions can be there. Homogeneous activities can be there. Anything can be homogeneous, anything can be heterogeneous. When anything in this world is uniformly made, the composition as a whole is uniform, then it is a homogeneous. Heterogeneous is when there is everything is mixed together, there is no uniformity maintained, then it is heterogeneous. Basically these are biological terms, but they are there. That is the basic difference. Don't understand that I'm trying to divide mixtures into homogeneous mixture and heterogeneous mixture. No. Mixtures basically are when you mix them together, then we can consider them in three different mixtures are possible. Three different mixtures are possible. The three different mixtures are solution, suspension and colloidal solutions. One is a solution, suspension, colloidal solution. Especially when you mix solid into liquid. These are available in all other formats also, my dear students. All other formats also. But we will usually, to understand them in a better formation, we normally take the examples of solid in liquids. And then what you get, this type of solution, this type of mixtures. These all mixtures are basically sometimes solutions, sometimes suspensions and sometimes colloidal solutions. But solution, these three solutions are sometimes homogeneous, one is homogeneous, one is heterogeneous. In characteristic, the characteristic property of one mixture is homogeneous. This type of mixtures are homogeneous, means they will be having uniform distribution throughout their mass. It is a mixture which is homogeneous. Another will be heterogeneous, because it is heterogeneous, it is its characteristic property. It does not mean that mixture is divided into homogeneous mixture and heterogeneous mixture. No, it is a property. Are you getting? Whenever a mixture has uniform distribution throughout it, I will call it as homogeneous mixture. Whenever a mixture has no uniform composition throughout its mass, then I will call it as a heterogeneous mixture. It is basically a property. Okay, so this is one, and this is one question that is asked. Of course, it is asked twice. In page number 15 also it is asked, list the points of differences between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixture. And I think it is repeated, this question is repeated in page number 18. Differentiate between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures with examples. The examples, of course, you can take the same example: salt in water, oil in water. There can be more sand in water, whatever it is. So this is more than sufficient. But now let us go to the mixture we actually are. When we talk about mixture, usually we take examples of, for your syllabus in your textbook, everywhere they are taken examples of solid into liquid, and then we have one is solution, one is suspension. And the other one is colloid or colloidal solution. So, see, solution, if you take, there are the best example is basically, of course, either take a salt solution or a sugar solution. Okay, you either take a salt solution or a sugar solution. So I will prefer to take a sugar solution. So here, if you will see, when you talk about sugar solution, of course, then to compare it at the same time, in your textbook they have given you, say, copper sulfate solution is taken. Copper sulfate is nothing but a salt. It is basically a salt. Again, there is potassium permanganate solution is taken. So you are free to take these type of solutions, but basically I'll prefer to take solutions that you basically are knowing them, you are handling them. So the second one I'll take the solution is of see, we know wheat, gehu ka aata. Wheat, if you mix wheat in water, wheat flour in water, or you can take wheat flour in water, or that is the best example, wheat flour in water. You can even take mud, no problem. Mud also is a basically that type of only. You can take mud in water or a wheat flour in water. What happens? Is there any difference between the two? When you take sugar and you take mud, is there any difference between the two? Yes, you know that sugar basically is completely soluble in water. Mud will not be completely soluble in water. Even if it gets, means there is some difference in their solution. What is the difference? One thing is there, first and foremost, see, this is definitely a homogeneous mixture. Homogeneous mixture. You could have taken oil in water, then that would have been better for you all to understand. But oil in water, mud in water. Here basically what happens, if you allow this mixture to settle for some time, then what will happen? You allow this mixture for settle for some time, you let it stand, you leave it undisturbed, you don't disturb it for some time, then what will happen? Does it have any difference? Does this have any difference? You take basic, better you take the example of oil and water. Here also you will see the difference. What will happen? The mud will sit down. Don't you feel so? The mud particles will sit down. The mud particles will sit down. You will see down there will be more of browny layer, and up there will be light brown layer. Right? So here what happens, this solution, when you make a solution, see, now this is something, one line over there in the textbook is very confusing. See, when I allow this thing to settle down, there is no difference. It stands like that only. I leave it undisturbed and now no difference is there. It stands like that only. If I leave this solution undisturbed for some time, that means the mud goes and settles down. What does this mean? What does this mean? That before when I was using it, when I stirred it and then I held it, though it looked it was not moving, I let it to hold on. It was not moving. Though it looked like it was not moving, was it stable? The solution is unstable. It is only when I leave it undisturbed, it becomes stable, slowly, steadily, and afterwards mud settles down, then it becomes stable. At that time, do you think it is any more homogeneous now? No. Now the concentration of mud over here is very, very less, very less. It goes on increasing, and down the concentration of mud is more. Better take an example of oil and water. Oil will be separate and water will be down. You leave it. When you mix it together, you will see that it is there. All the oil particles, they go mix here and there, here and there, here and there. They are just dissolved. They look like they are dissolved. But leave it undisturbed for hardly some minutes, and then oil will be separated from them. That time, before that, it was basically an unstable mixture. Are you getting? So suspensions are heterogeneous mixture. Colloidal solutions are basically, the best example of a colloid is milk, blood, human blood. They are colloidal solutions. So they are again heterogeneous. Why? Because the particle mixed over there. There are particles mixed over there. Though you cannot see the particles over there. In colloidal solutions also particles are moving all around the colloidal solutions. They are definitely moving all around, but we can't see these particles. Reason I'll tell you, but this is basically again a heterogeneous mixture. Why we can't see these particles? Here, can we see the particles? No, the solute particles are not visible to naked eyes. Why? Because these solute particles are too minute. They are very minute to be seen by our open eyes. We can't see this. They are of the order of less than, this is given in a textbook, less than 1 nanometer. 1 nanometer is equal to 10 raised to the power of minus 9 meter. Okay, when you divide 1 meter by 10 raised to the power of 9, you divide 1 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is going to be 1 nanometer. You can talk it like this also. This is 1 nanometer. Too small value, and this is the less than 1 nanometer diameter. So what? How will you see this? This is not possibly seen by our naked eyes. This one, definitely they are visible. We can see the mud particles, we can see oil. They are, the solute particles are, solute particles are visible to naked eyes. Colloidal particle again are not visible. So here solute particles are not visible to naked eyes. But are the size of this same as the size of solution? No. The size of this particle is slightly bigger than the solute particles of the solution. The solute particles in the solution are very minute. The solute particles in the colloid are slightly bigger than them, but definitely they are not that big that we will be able to see with our eyes. Then what is the difference that it plays? So here what happens, these particles, solute particles, if they are so minute that if you take a filter paper, and put this salt solution in it, the whole salt will go through it, sugar solution in it, and this will go through it. Taste this sugar solution afterwards, it will be still sweet. All the sugar the particles mixed in that water has gone through it. So the solute particles are so minute that the pores of the filter paper, even the pores of the filter paper are larger than them. So the solute particles easily pass through the pores of the filter paper, and that's why you can't separate them. You can't separate sugar from water by the process of filtration. Simple process of filtration is not going to help for separating them. The solute particles pass through the filter paper. Hence, they can't be separated by filtration. By a process of filtration, I can't separate them. You talk about suspension. Solute particles, if you pass this mud solution through the filter paper, you will see good amount of mud present in the filter paper, trapped in the filter paper. The water that you get down will be considerably clearer compared to this water. So the solid particles don't pass through the filter paper, hence they can be separated by filtration. What about this? These colloidal particles, solid particles, also pass through the filter paper. They pass through the filter paper, and that's why they cannot be separated by filtration again. Colloidal particles or solute. Better we'll keep one only. Solid particles pass through the filter paper, hence they cannot be separated by filtration. But कहानी में twist, but there is one process, but they can be separated by centrifugation. The process of centrifugation. Are you getting my point? What is this process? Centrifugation. This is a separate process, my dear students. Usually you will see this process very nicely in 11th and 12th science standards. If you will go to 11th and 12th science, then you will definitely see this process, centrifuge. Normally what happens, they have got a apparatus over here. It is a huge apparatus which has got slots inside, circular in shape. It is circular in shape. I will not be able to draw it. I don't think so. This will be like this. How do I take this? Like this. But this is down and this is a 3D. It will still follow the same thing. Here there are basically holes made. Slots, not holes. They are the slots made. The test tube goes and sits in this slot like this. But definitely there it is tilted. This wall you look like it is flat. This look like it is flat. If I put it a slot over here, if I place the test tube with this slot, it will go like this. But no, this wall is basically tilted like this. So the slot is like this. The test tube goes and sits like this, slanted position. Test tube goes and sits in every slot in the slanted position, and then this pot, it rotates with a great speed. It just keeps on rotating. So with that pot, this test tube also keeps on rotating. This test tube keeps on rotating at a very tremendous speed. Then what happens? These colloidal particles, they are forced down. They are forced down to go and sit at the bottom of the test tube. And that time they are pushed down or forced down, and then they come down and sit down. The same activity you can't apply with this. You can't force these particles, solid particles, to go and sit down. They will not sit down. This will happen only in the case of colloidal particles, and that process is called as centrifugation. This centrifugation process is used many places in our day-to-day life also. Best is that if you must have seen your mummy making ghee is made at that time also. They churn this, they churn the milk so that the cream comes up. At that time, same thing is happening. They are forcing the milk particles to sit down. The milk particles sit down, the cream comes up. That is basically a centrifuge process only. If you will see your washing machine, in washing machine we have got dryer. The water basically comes out of the dryer. What it does, it rotates. The dryer is the one who rotates the clothes in tremendous speed. So when they are rotating at the tremendous speed, the water particles that are in that cloth, they are all forced to run away, and they are thrown away. And when they are thrown away, they slide down the wall of the dryer and they come down. So that is also basically a centrifuge process. That is, by this process, colloidal particles can be separated. Okay, so filtration is not the process used over here, but centrifugation is the process used over here for separating the solute particles or the colloidal particles from the solvent. So that is all. That is, I mean, that is not all. I don't think so. But one very important topic is there. See, if I take a torch, I'm very bad in drawing, my dear students. अभी मिल गया. If I take a torch and I leave it over here like that, I shoot a torch light on this solution. Nothing. I will not be able to see any difference. Nothing. At the most I will see light over here, but the change in light, no, nothing. But the same if I do it over here. If I do it over here, if I have a torch like this, and if I leave this over here, then definitely I will be able to see a path of light over here. You will be able to see the path of the light over here, and definitely over there also. Why? Because the particles over here, these particles over here, they act as they disperse the light. They disperse. Sometimes even it is possible that you will even see the change in the color of the light. If you are lucky enough, especially in those colloidal particles, you will be able to see the change in the color of the light. If milk is there and you throw light on the milk, it is possible that you will be able to see the change in the color of the light. The light, when it passes through the white milk, there will be color change of light, showing the path of the light, how it is traveling. The reason is that basically dispersion of light is taking place over there. Dispersion of light basically is what? Light is a ray of light. It looks white in color, but it is made up of 7 different colors. The 7 different colors, they are mixed together, and then one white ray of light is seen. But when you are able to disperse this light by some or the other process, if this light is allowed to or made to disperse, then it will show its colors. All the 7 colors. The rainbow is nothing but the same. when the sunlight, there is rainbow occurs when? Only during the rainy season. After the rain, especially after the rain, when there are lots of droplets in the air, at that time if the sunlight falls on those droplets, then the light is basically dispersed. It gets dispersed into 7 colors, and then we see a beautiful rainbow over there. That basically dispersion is nothing but splitting of light into its component colors. That is dispersion of light. So what role a water vapor does over there in the air, same role is played by the particles over here, the particles over there. The only thing is that you should be lucky enough that what is the size of the particle. Is it properly like that? And they should be aligned also in such a fashion that color change is seen. Some amount of color change will be definitely seen by the dispersion, because some amount of dispersion will be definitely seen. But is the dispersion sufficient enough to show the color change? That will be a luck for you all people. So, but then some amount of dispersion will take place, and that dispersion is sufficient enough to show the path of the light. So here what happens, there are no dispersion takes place when a ray of light is incident, no dispersion takes place here. But when a ray of light is incident, dispersion takes place, and the path of light is visible. But remember, my dear student, one more point you have to remember. This will be possible only when the mud particles are properly uniformly distributed. Means when the mud is settled down, at that time the dispersion will not be seen. When the mud particles are settled in this position, the dispersion will not be seen. You require the mud particles to be here. You have to stir them, and then you have to shoot the light over there. Once the mud particles are settled down, then the dispersion will not be seen. Here definitely, because there is this is nothing of that sort. Here did I write that point? I did not. No, I did not write that point. That one more important point is there. See, but here of course I will complete this point. But remember that point is important. 1, 2, 3. This is not the fourth point. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now I come over here. This I can consider as my fifth point. Okay. What is the fifth point here? When ray of light is incident, dispersion takes place. Dispersion takes place, dispersion can be seen, dispersion occurs, and a path of light is visible. This is the case, but I tell you, this is I remember that point only because when I was talking about the separation. See here, this is again very important point, but we can't miss this out. I have told you, but I have not written it. See here, when left undisturbed, when I leave this undisturbed, the solute particles don't settle down. This shows solution is stable. Solution is stable. When we talk about here, when left undisturbed, the solute particles settle down. This shows suspension is unstable. This is stable, this is unstable. And when you talk about here, when left undisturbed, the solute particles or the colloidal particles don't settle down. This shows colloidal solution is stable. Okay, my dear students, with this I think I have completed the huge topic of solution, suspension and colloidal solution. Only thing that you have to remember, when a ray of light is incident, dispersion takes place and a path of light is visible. A path of light is visible, especially when here, this is called as Tyndall effect. Tyndall effect. When the ray of light is incident on the colloidal particles, dispersion occurs, and this dispersion is a Paka dispersion. Most of the time, color changes will be seen, not because of of course the white color of the milk will be helping to show the difference of the light. It is very much possible, but it is not only that. Even if supposing many other colloidal solutions are there, when you blood is a colloidal solution, if you really pass a ray of light through the blood, you will be able to see the change of color in the light. That also is basically because of colloidal particles, and that change of light or the dispersion of light when the light is incident on the colloidal particle is called as Tyndall effect. Tyndall effect. That is also important, my dear student. This basically is not but some MCQ or something. Tyndall effect. Tyndall. Tyndall effect. That is there. With this I think I have completed the topic. One is remaining. Concentration of a solution. Definitely we can have a concentration of a solution which basically is not, here we all don't have, but concentration of solution, it is very easy, my dear students. We can find the concentration of solution in percentage. In percentage. Like the one example is given to you. A solution contains 40 gram of common salt and 320 gram of water. Are you getting? So there is this water. Water is 320 gram, and then we have a sodium chloride NaCl of 40 grams. We put this NaCl, 40 grams NaCl in the water. Then when we have this, what is the concentration of the solute, means concentration of the sodium chloride in this solution? Are you getting? See, when we talk about concentration, it is simple, my dear students. It is applicable everywhere in the same fashion. It is maths. See, if we talk about percentage of your marks, when we talk about your percentage of the marks, like supposing if your marks are percentage of marks in English, percentage of marks in Hindi, percentage of marks in maths, percentage of marks in science, if they ask like this. So supposing your marks are 100 marks English, 100 marks Hindi and all. So when you get your marks, how do you calculate the percentage of marks? You take the total marks, English 100, Hindi 100, maths 100, science 100. social studies 100, 500 in total are how much? 500. And then you take the marks of English, marks of Hindi, you actually how much you have scored. Total are how much and how much you have scored. Total are how much and how much you have scored. You divide the two. Total 500 and how much you have scored. English marks, Hindi marks, the science marks, maths marks, social studies marks. All these marks that you have scored, you total them. So total marks you scored upon 500 multiplied by 100 will give you a percentage of marks scored by you. See, because I am calculating percentage of marks scored, I will take total of the marks scored upon total of the marks available. Are you getting? So because I am finding concentration of solute, so what I will do will be equal to solute, weight of solute upon total weight, or I can say total weight of total weight of solution, total weight of solution into 100. See what will be this in this case? Weight of solid over here is 40. But what is the weight of solution? See, weight of solution will be what? 320 plus 40. That will be the weight of solution. I am telling you weight of solution, not the weight of solvent. Weight of solution. Are you getting? So it will be 40 upon, if I add this, will be 360 into 100. I calculate this. 4 tens are 4 nines are, that will be 100 upon 9. 100 upon 9 will give me 11% or something like that. Okay, so that will be there. Now because I took the weight of solute and because I was finding concentration of solute, that's why I took weight of solute over here. If they would have asked me find the concentration of solvent, then I will take weight of solvent. What is the weight of solvent? 320 upon total weight of solution is 360 into 100. So this will be 0 1 0 1 and then 4 8s are 4 9s are, this will be 800 divided by 9. 9 8s are 72, 80 again 8s are 72. It will be something 88.89% of solvent in this. Are you getting? It is basically concentration of anything will be weight of that solute upon weight of solution into 100. That will give you concentration of solute. If the same question would have been concentration of solvent, then weight of solvent upon total weight of solution into 100. Same will be applicable when it is volume of solute. At that time it will be volume of solute upon volume of solution. Volume of solute upon volume of solution into 100. Concentration of, when they have given, it depends what they have given. See, basically these changes can come when supposing if they are giving you the mixture is of oil and water. When they give you oil and water, so that time they will give you the mixture as supposing 50 ml of oil is mixed in 500 ml of water. Now this ml is volume, it is not weight now. 50 ml of oil is mixed in 500 ml of water. Now this is volume. So now what we will do? Volume of oil upon volume of solution means 50 plus 500. So 50 upon 550 into 100 will give you concentration of solute. Concentration of solvent, that time you will have to take 500 upon 550 into 100 will give you concentration of solvent. Okay, so this is one topic that was there. Then what is suspension and this? There are some questions we can discuss on that if it is discussable, otherwise I will have to write it again over here. Question, page number 18. One more, the components of, no, the differentiate between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures with examples that I have told before. How are solution and suspension different from each other? This is what all solutions, that is salt, colloidal, solution, suspension. How are they different from each other? That you can take this. Purposely I have written like this, my dear students. The purpose behind writing them in this fashion is, see, you can take out the points of differentiate between solution and suspension, suspension and colloidal solution, solution and colloidal solution. You can take any. Also at the same time, properties of solution also are there. This will give you properties of solution, this will give you properties of suspension, this will give you properties of colloidal. So this way you have, and even if they give you, ask you to write the short notes, this will be there. So majority of the time, many MCQs also will be cleared over here. If you properly understand this, if you properly understand these properties, many MCQs, many fill in the blanks, many true or false objectives will be cleared over here. Understand this properly. Tyndall effect and everything. I have purposely told you. Colloidal solutions, colloidal particles will show Tyndall effect. What is the Tyndall effect? Dispersion of light by the colloidal particles. Okay, so here they have given one more question. To make a saturated solution, 36 gram of sodium chloride is dissolved in 100 gram of water. 36 gram of sodium chloride is dissolved in 100 gram of water at 293 Kelvin. Find its concentration at this temperature. Find its concentration at its temperature. Because concentration of saturated solution. Now what will be that? Concentration will be weight of solute upon weight of solvent into 100. So weight of solute is what they have given. Weight of solute is 36 gram. Upon weight of solution will be what now? 100 gram of water plus 36 gram of sodium chloride. 136. So 36 upon 136 into 100. Are you getting, my dear students? 36 upon 136 into 100. Calculate that, and that will give you concentration of the solution. Okay, this is one topic cleared, my dear students. Yes, after that there are some activities. Actually speaking, I will not be able to draw all these figures. It is not practically possible for me, but I will try to explain these activities. These are activities of separation. See, as I told you over here, we can't apply filtration for separation of salt solution, sugar solution. We can't apply filtration. But then, can we still separate sugar or salt from its water solution? Yes. The very nice example is evaporation. Evaporation is one of the very simple processes that we can use for separation of salt from its water solution, or sugar also from its water solution. But the example that they have taken over here, I suppose, is of ink. I suppose, put a watch glass on the mouth of the beaker, put a few drops of ink on the watch glass. Basically this, here again the same thing, the ink is there and water is there, and then water is there or not? No, only ink is there. I am very sorry. They have taken only ink, no water. They have taken only ink in the watch glass. The water could have been taken, still it would have been same, but still they want to see ink is made up of how many ever types of thing. Ink is so much, it is seen as a liquid. It is the whatever ink that we have got, it is seen as a liquid. When you heat this ink, then what happens? Of course, but in this process they have not heated ink directly. They have taken it on the watch glass, they have kept it on the beaker. The beaker is there down, a beaker is there down, the beaker is heated. The beaker is heated, the beaker has water in it, the beaker is heated from down, and there is a watch glass kept on the top of the beaker. Likewise, they have heated this ink. Direct heat of ink will get damaged, or it will just ruptured. It will be ruptured. So that's why it is not like sugar solution. Definitely sugar solution would have been there. You could have directly heated the sugar solution. Water would have got evaporated and sugar would have remained down. Salt solution also would have been the same solution. But because this is ink they have taken, and ink directly, it is not ink solution. They have taken ink. So when you heat this ink, not directly, indirectly you heat this ink. How they have indirectly heat? The beaker is taken, on beaker they have kept this watch glass, and in that watch glass they have taken ink. And of course in the beaker there is water also. When you heat this, the vapor will go up and they will heat the watch glass. After some time, definitely there is dye seen over there. Thick ink is nothing but dye, D-Y-E, dye. Ink dye is seen over there. This ink is also, means what? Basically the questions are asked, what do you think got evaporated from the watch glass? The water in the ink has got evaporated from the watch glass. Is there a residue on the watch glass? Yes, definitely there is a residue of the dye is there on the watch glass. So is ink a single substance or is it a mixture? Definitely ink is a mixture. Why? Because water mixed in the dye, first of all. And this dye also is not made of one color. They are also made up of different colors. So it is definitely a mixture. So this is one process, that is evaporation. Centrifugation, I have explained to you. Centrifugation is a process where basically you force the particles to settle to the bottom. That is one process. At that time you use different processes. Centrifuge apparatus is a different apparatus where basically I have told you there are slots in the apparatus where you keep the test tubes in those slots, and then you on this apparatus so that it rotates with a huge speed, and then you force these particles to sit down. See, I can tell you, my dear students, this centrifuge is a process that you also experience. See, when you are sitting in a bus, see, this example is not taken in a textbook, but try to understand it is same way. It is a similar fashion. It is a similar force that is acting on you. If you are sitting in a bus and a bus takes a sharp, when it is in a good speed, not slow speed, it has to be fast enough. At that time it takes a sharp turn, sharp circular turn. So if it is taking a right turn like this, or for you it is taking a right turn like this, do you experience a force on your own self? Yes. Where is that force acting? When you are turning like this, when the bus is turning like this, where are you being pushed? You are pushed like this. You hold your seat, the other seat like this, and you try to be in the position. At that time you are forced outside. You are pushed outside the bus. That is nothing but a centrifugal force that is acting on you, which is pushing you down, forcing you to go down. So that's what is actually happening in the centrifugal apparatus also. They are forcing the particles to go down. Same fashion. That is a centrifugal force. Physics deals with that. Where was I? Okay, fine. That is centrifugation. Centrifugation is one of the procedures over there. And also there they are talking about how can we separate a mixture of two immiscible liquids. Immiscible liquids means the liquids that cannot mix or dissolve in one another. See, it is simple basically. Now I will have to rub this. My dear students, if you want to have this, you can take a screenshot of this, because some amount of drawing I will be needed. So you can take a screenshot of this, or maybe you can write it down in any way that you feel. Okay, so see, what is they talking about? Two immiscible liquids. Two immiscible liquids, and what they do is that there is a type of a pot over here. You have a pot over here, and then this pot has a stop cork over here, a tap you can say. Supposing if I have water and then oil over here, water and oil over here. So when it is settles down, it is just a normal physical process of separation, nothing more. Evaporation is still more something you have to handle. In here you don't even have to handle this. You just have to take the advantage of the densities. Densities will separate them, and because the densities will separate them, allow them to settle down over there. Once they have settled down, once oil has reached up, water has come down, or any other mixture, anyway the two liquids, because they are immiscible, they will definitely not dissolve in one another, and that's why they will separate one or the other way. Then what you have to just do is that open the tap so that this water flows down. It comes over here, and the moment the oil comes at the bottom, you have to close the tap. That's all. That is the process by which you can separate two immiscible liquids. Okay, and then there is one more process. How can we separate a mixture of salt and camphor? Salt and camphor. What is camphor basically? We have finished this. I've talked to you about camphor in chapter 1. Camphor is a particle which undergoes sublimation. What is sublimation? When you heat any particle, when you heat a solid particle, it directly changes into gaseous state without undergoing the liquid state. That process is called as sublimation. So when you are going to separate salt and camphor, you will have to take the help of sublimation. What you do is that, of course, here also a watch glass is needed. In this watch glass, you will have salt and camphor kept over here. Salt and camphor, sand and camphor, whatever it is. You then burn this, heat this. Of course, first here there is a conical flask that is kept over here. This is a conical flask that is kept over here, and of course there is a cotton plugged over here, and then you start heating this with the help of a burner. Fine. So what happens when you heat this? Sand also will get heated, salt also will get heated, and camphor also will get heated. But because camphor undergoes sublimation, it will immediately get changed into gaseous state, and it becomes gas. It becomes gas, and it tries to escape from here, but then it comes in contact with the conical flask, and over there, because the temperature of this conical flask is not that high as compared to this temperature, it will condense there. It will condense there, and it will be plugged over here again, and it again solidifies and becomes camphor again. So this flask you have to remove immediately before it becomes as hot as the sand, and then you just have to take out the camphor from there. So this is basically the process of sublimation. Sublimation process is used to separate salt and camphor, because camphor is a sublimate. Okay, is the dye. One more experiment they have taken, a nice experiment this is. I thought that I will not be drawing, but I think I have to draw this also. See here, what is the dye in black ink a single color? As I told you, the dye is not one color. It is never one color. See here what they have done for that. They have taken a filter paper, and then they are asking you to make a line over here, just to guide you, nothing more than that. And then you drop a ink over here. One drop of ink is more than sufficient, just to show that the ink, where was the ink? The ink was over here. Fine, that is nothing more than the line is not going to just there, it is going to show you where were you. Now what you have to do, you have to take a flask or a beaker which has water in it. Now you have to drop this, or just go lower this down. Fine, just that this ink should be just above the water surface, not touching the water surface. It should be just above the water surface, and you have to keep it like that for some time. You can take a flask such that it is exactly of this height, so that you can clamp this over here and leave it there. So you will be able to understand that. Fine. This is the arrangement that they have done, so that you don't have to keep on holding it for a long time, otherwise your hands will pain, and then you may leave it down, or you may drop it down, and then the ink will come in contact with the water, then everything will vain. So it is better that you keep it like this. You can also consider that holding this like this and then pouring water inside it, drop by drop, slowly, steadily, and when the water reaches this height, stop pouring the water. That also can be done. But the idea is that this setup should be created so that the ink drop is slightly away from the water surface. So now what happens after some time? See, it is a filter paper. Slowly, steadily, water will start rising up. Slowly, steadily, water will start rising up. The water level means rising up means what? Rising up through the filter paper. The water will start rising up through the filter paper. This you must have seen. Even if you have a cloth, if your bucket full of water is there, you put one end of the cloth in the water, in the bucket, and hold that water other end in your hand, or you keep that other end of the cloth away. Water will slowly, steadily rise up through the cloth, and slowly, steadily it will come on the top of the cloth, other end of the cloth. So that happens. Water has the capacity of climbing up. So that is basically diffusion, my dear students. That also you will have somewhere or the other point. So here the water will start climbing up, slowly, steadily it will start climbing up, and as water starts climbing up, the water that comes through this ink, passes over this ink, you will see that this ink will also rise up very slowly, steadily, and it will have different color shades: dark blue, green, red, crimson red, pink, yellow type of colors it will go on showing, just to show you that black color dye was not made of only one color. Okay, my dear students, my voice is going now. I'll just finish off this topic now. How can we separate a mixture of two miscible liquids? Two miscible liquids. Now there are two types of liquids again. Two types of miscible liquids. See, this is again a very interesting topic. See here, what they are doing is that miscible liquids means basically you can talk about milk dissolved in water. But here you should know the temperature, boiling point of both. That is very important. The boiling point of the two has to be considerably different. Boiling point of two has to be, you can consider oil and water. In your textbook they have given acetone and water. Acetone is something like your spirit and everything. It is, the boiling point is much low than that of water. You can consider oil also. Oil also has got boiling point very low than that of water. What they do is that this is a conical flask. Okay, cork is fitted over here. Of course, then there you have to heat this with the help of a burner. But of course, before heating, I have to. This conical flask has got a tube which goes through a condenser. Diagram can be slightly different, my dear students. Okay, and there is a condenser. This is maintained over here. See, what is this condenser doing? Condenser is nothing but this is water over here. There is a water level over here. From here there is cold water that goes in. Cold water in, and as you know, see, this is acetone and water, right? Acetone plus water. You will start heating this. You heat it, it reaches 50 degrees Celsius, 60 degrees Celsius. Acetone has got very low boiling point. Water boiling point is 100 degrees Celsius. So as it reaches to its boiling point, maybe 60 degrees Celsius, 55 degrees Celsius, whatever it is, acetone will get boiled, and at that time the temperature of this, it is not, the thermometer is given, yeah, that's what I am thinking. This temperature will stop as soon as the temperature reaches the boiling point of acetone. As I have told you, latent heat of vaporization. Here the temperature will stop because the acetone is getting converted into vapor. So all the amount of heat energy will be used in conversion of acetone into vapor. So that conversion will stop, the temperature will stop over there. At that time what happens, this acetone, which is a vapor, it will start coming over here, and it is coming over here. But then when it reaches over here, the temperature of acetone vapor is definitely high. High means 55 degrees Celsius, 60 degrees Celsius, whatever it is, but it's considerably high. Considering this water, you will keep the water over here, inlet is cold, water enters over here. Of course, it is not mixing with the tube inside. It is just surrounding this tube over here. And because this is 50 degrees Celsius, the water over here which enters over here will definitely get heated, will turn hot because of this acetone over here. This hot water is then sent out from here. More cold water comes from here. As it becomes hot, it rises up, it goes out from there. And then eventually the temperature of acetone decreases because heat is absorbed by this water. The water in the condenser absorbs the heat, and then this acetone, it condenses, it liquefies, and this acetone is collected over here. So acetone has got separated from the water. As soon as the temperature after some time start rising above 60 degrees Celsius, 62, 63, just close it. It means that now the complete acetone has got converted into liquid. It has gone vaporized. No more acetone has remained over here. So now you can off the burner. Okay. So this is what they do. Very nice. This process is called as distillation. This is mostly used for purification of water that we drink. This distilled water is very pure form of water. This is very pure form of water. This is used in all the municipalities and all the whatever the water stations are there. They do this. They let the water steam, convert the water into steam, heat it, boil it, convert it into steam. Whatever steam goes up, they then pass it through the condenser, and that the steam is again converted into liquid. That water is supposed to be the most clear water. Are you getting? So that is what happens over here. Of course, but one more distillation process is there, which is there for you all people. Over there, what happens, but I told you over here, this difference between the boiling point of the two miscible liquids has to be more. The boiling point of acetone and water has to be considerably different. Only then it is achievable. If supposing the boiling point is not very much different, then it will be a problem, because slight increase over here and the other solvent also will start converting into vapor. If supposing the distance is hardly 20 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Celsius. So 20 degrees Celsius will go over there, it will stop, but it may shoot immediate to 30 degrees Celsius. Before this acetone, the vapor reaches over there, or the one part A reaches over there, part B will start vaporizing, and then some amount of vapor will reach over there. It is very much possible, my dear students. So then what do we do? Then what happens is there, The setup is same. The setup is same, except what happens is that they keep a unit called as fractional distillation unit over here. There is a fractional distillation of a thermometer is required over here. This fractional distillation unit has got, these are most of the times they use some glass beads over here, but definitely this is an arrangement which plays a big role. See what happens, they are very much at a lower temperature. Of course, this is a mixture of, I can say, part A, part B. There are two solvents over here, one solute and solvent over here, and the temperature difference of the boiling point is very less. Supposing if this is 30 degrees Celsius and this is going to be 35 degrees Celsius, they boil. They start vaporizing at that degree Celsius. Then what happens? Of course, when part A vaporizes, it goes over here and it starts rising. Temperature is not huge. Of course, I know that because of latent heat, as long as part A is going, first only part A will keep on going, part A will keep on going, part A will keep on going, and then it goes over there and part A reaches over here. Fine. But at a point when what happens, there are still some amount of part A over here and 35 degrees Celsius starts rising and part B also starts rising. What happens? Part B also starts rising from here. But part B, as soon as it comes in contact with this, it will condense immediately. This will condense. Part A also goes over here. Part B also goes over here. Part B condenses and then it reverses its motion. It comes down. Part A still goes up. Part B will go and it will come down. Because part B, why it will condense immediately? See, 35 degrees Celsius is the boiling point of part B. To condense also 35 degrees Celsius will condense. The temperature of condense means what? The vapor will convert into liquid. At boiling point, liquid gets part A, the liquid part A, liquid form of part A. At boiling point at 30 degrees Celsius, the liquid form of part A gets converted to vapor form. Are you getting? At 30 degrees Celsius, liquid form of part A gets converted to vapor form and it goes on rising, the temperature goes on rising. Now if I want to convert this vapor of part A back to liquid form, I have to drop the temperature to 30 degrees Celsius. Only when the temperature drops back at 30 degrees Celsius, the vapor form of part A will get converted to water. Part B, basically the boiling point is 35 degrees Celsius. So at 35 degrees Celsius, the part B will get converted to vapor. And the slight decrease in the temperature, 35 degrees Celsius back, 34 degrees Celsius back, and immediately it will condense. Temperature has to fall to 30 degrees Celsius. Only then this part A will condense. Part A will condense at 30 degrees Celsius. When the temperature drop is to 30 degrees Celsius, part A will condense. Part B will condense at 35 degrees Celsius. So part B will condense faster compared to part A. Okay, and that's why part B, when it is rising up, it will start rising down also. It will start falling down also. Why? Because it is condensing faster. It is condensing immediately. These glass beads are at much lower temperature than this solution. These are at 35 degrees Celsius, 36 degrees Celsius. but these are lower. As soon as this B comes in contact with this, it is in 36-37 degrees Celsius, and then immediately it starts falling and falls 35 degrees Celsius it reaches, and then it converts into liquid, it drops down. But for this part A, 35 degrees Celsius it's still higher, so it will keep on going up and it falls down over there. So in this way, when two miscible liquids don't have huge difference in their boiling points, they are separated by a process called as fractional distillation. Fractional distillation. Okay, of course this topic is not that much in depth explained to you. It is only told for your syllabus that how two miscible liquids having less difference in their boiling point is separated by the process of fractional distillation. Only a fractional distill condenser is used over there. That is all they have told. How, what happens, why does part be written down, nothing is given in detail over there. So that is more than sufficient for us to understand. Okay, so that is there. And of course one more procedure is there that you can just go through. Crystallization, one process is there which they have run through, I suppose. Where is that? Yes. See, crystallization is used to purify solids. If a solid is there and you feel that that solid is not pure solid, especially salt, when you have to purify this salt, then crystallization procedure is used. It is same like that of evaporation, but in crystallization what they do is that they heat that solid and then they let it evaporate, keeping covered it with the filter paper, So what happens over here, the water droplets, definitely whatever impurities are there in that solid salt, they evaporate and crystals remain down. So whatever the crystals of salt are there, they are purest form of salt, and that process is called as crystallization process. Okay, that is basically there. Purification of salt, the application of crystallization is purification of salt that we get from seawater. Especially for salt purification, this process is used, and all type of salts are there. Copper sulfate, blue vitriol, green vitriol, all type of salts are there. Questions used over here are: how will you separate a mixture containing kerosene and petrol? Mixture containing kerosene and petrol. What do you think? Kerosene and petrol, this mixture is what type of a mixture? Miscible mixture or immiscible mixture? Definitely kerosene and petrol are immiscible. They don't dissolve in one another, so they are immiscible. So you will just take care of that pot, as I told you, pot, let them settle so that the two separate over there, and then you separate them by the simple procedure. Okay, name the technique to separate butter from curd. Butter from curd, so it will be centrifugal. Churning technique is centrifugation technique. Salt from seawater, evaporation. Camphor from salt, sublimation. Okay, so what type of mixtures are separated from the technique of crystallization? The salt mixtures are impure solid salts are used over here, are purified by the process of crystallization. Okay, physical and chemical changes, what are types of pure substances? This we can do later, my dear students. Okay, the topic is very small, but still it is one of the nice topics, elements and compounds. Okay, my dear students, the rest I'll take later. Thank you very much.